Мы рассматриваем Федеративную Республику Нигерию как перспективного партнера на африканском континенте.
Мы, конечно, дорожим дружбой с Россией, очень высоко ценим всю.
It's April 15th, 2025. The spires of the Kremlin catch the morning light as two aircraft cross paths in Russian airspace. Two planes, two leaders, two visions for Africa's future, and one explosive secret that threatens to reshape West African politics forever. Captain Ibrahim Traoré, 36 years old, has just completed what Russian officials describe as a highly productive three-day visit to Moscow. The former military officer who took power in September 2022 has secured a comprehensive security and development package worth over $300 million. Advanced Orlan-10 drones, military training protocols, infrastructure projects including a railway that could transform Burkina Faso's economy, a direct challenge to Western influence in the region. But as Traoré's plane leaves Russian airspace, Nigeria's Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, held what's officially termed a routine diplomatic engagement. The timing raises questions that echo through diplomatic channels from Paris to Abuja. What made Nigeria's top military commander to stay in Moscow just hours after the leader of a neighboring country departed? A coincidence? Or something more calculated? Welcome to Africa Liberators, where we bring you the genuine news and critical events across our continent that mainstream media refuses to cover. Today, we're investigating a diplomatic incident that reveals the hidden mechanisms of power in West Africa. If this is your first time here, make sure to subscribe, like, and share this video. We deliver powerful stories like this every day that you won't find anywhere else. By the end of this hour, you'll understand why this diplomatic chess game matters to every African, whether you're in Ouagadougou, London, Paris, China, or America. The evidence suggests connections between France's President Macron, Nigeria's President Tinubu, and a coordinated effort to undermine the growing alliance of Sahel states. What happened in those Moscow meetings remained confidential until May 12th, when an unprecedented leak exposed everything. The questions now: who orchestrated this operation? Who exposed it? And what does it mean for Africa's sovereignty in a world of competing global powers? This is the story of a bold leader's vision for independence, a regional power's complex allegiances, and the high-stakes game that unfolded when those forces collided in Moscow this spring. To understand Captain Ibrahim Traoré's meteoric rise, we must first examine his origins. Born in 1988 in Bondoukoui, western Burkina Faso, Traoré's early life reflected the struggles of many young Burkinabé. He excelled academically, eventually joining the military and receiving artillery training, skills that would later prove decisive. By 2022, the 34-year-old captain had built a reputation as a disciplined officer, but few anticipated his emergence as a national leader. His military experience included combat operations against jihadist insurgents in the country's north, where he witnessed firsthand the limitations of Burkina Faso's military resources. What drives Traoré? Public statements reveal a vision centered on three principles: sovereignty over Burkina Faso's natural resources, security for its citizens, and economic independence. Unlike many coup leaders across Africa's history, Traoré consistently emphasizes that power is a means to achieve national autonomy, not an end in itself. This message resonates powerfully with Burkina Faso's youth, who make up over 65% of the population. In a country where the median age is just 17.6 years, Traoré's relative youth and direct communication style have generated substantial popular support, particularly in urban centers like Ouagadougou and Bobo-Dioulasso. The context for Traoré's rise is rooted in Burkina Faso's complex relationship with France. From 1919 until independence in 1960, Upper Volta, as it was then called, remained under French colonial rule. This period established economic structures that critics argue continued to extract wealth from the country long after formal independence. No discussion of Burkina Faso's leadership is complete without acknowledging Thomas Sankara.
J'ai dit non à l'aide alimentaire. Pourquoi?
L'aide alimentaire que nous avons reçue, malheureusement, au lieu de nous aider à nous développer, nous a maintenus dans une mentalité d'assister. Chaque jour, on tend la main pour demander à manger. Ça, c'est mauvais.
From 1983 to 1987, Sankara led a revolutionary government that renamed the country Burkina Faso, Land of Incorruptible People. His policies focused on self-sufficiency, anti-imperialism, and women's rights. Sankara's assassination in 1987 transformed him into a powerful symbol of interrupted potential. The parallels between Sankara and Traoré are striking. Both took power in their mid-30s, both emerged from the military, and both articulated visions of breaking for independency. Traoré himself has referenced Sankara repeatedly, calling him a guide for our generation. However, Traoré operates in a significantly different geopolitical landscape, with new global powers competing for influence. The events of September 30, 2022 unfolded rapidly, 8 months after Lieutenant Colonel Paul-Henri Damiba had himself taken power in a coup. Military units loyal to Traoré surrounded strategic locations in Ouagadougou. Citing Damiba's failure to address the worsening security situation against jihadist groups, Traoré's forces seized control of national television and announced the formation of a new government. Within days, negotiations mediated by traditional and religious leaders resulted in Damiba's resignation and exile to Togo. Traoré, now the youngest head of state in the world, assumed the presidency with promises to recalibrate the fight against insurgency and review Burkina Faso's international partnerships. Traoré's policy shifts came rapidly. By January 2023, his government had demanded the withdrawal of French forces, ending a decade-long military presence. The 400 French Special Forces troops stationed to combat jihadist groups linked to Al-Qaeda and Islamic State departed the country by the end of February. Traoré's government cited sovereignty concerns and questioned the effectiveness of French operations. Perhaps most consequential for Burkina Faso's economic future was Traoré's approach to the country's mineral wealth. Though full nationalization hasn't occurred, his government has incrementally increased state control over the gold mining sector, which accounts for approximately 75% of the country's export earnings. New regulations have required mining companies to pay part of their income taxes in advance and sell 30% of their production to the state. By mid-2023, the outlines of Traoré's international realignment became clear. Facing security challenges and economic pressures, his government initiated contact with Russian officials. These preliminary discussions expanded rapidly, covering military cooperation, infrastructure development, and technological training. Russia's existing presence in neighboring Mali provided a template for engagement. For Russia, Burkina Faso's gold reserves presented economic opportunities, while the country's strategic location offered geopolitical advantages in expanding influence across the Sahel region. Through these decisive early moves, Traoré established himself as a leader determined to chart an independent course for Burkina Faso. The question remains, does his vision represent a genuine continuation of Sankara's revolutionary project, or a new direction shaped by today's multipolar world? What would Sankara think of Traoré's moves? Drop your thoughts below. By July 2023, Captain Traoré recognized that Burkina Faso could not stand alone against both regional and international pressures. The solution emerged through an unprecedented alliance with neighboring countries facing similar challenges. On September 16, 2023, a historic document was signed in Mali's capital. The Alliance of Sahel States, AES in its French acronym, formalized the cooperation between Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. Three nations, all led by military governments that had seized power from civilian authorities, all seeking to redefine their relationship with former colonial power France. Colonel Assimi Goïta of Mali, General Abdourahmane Tiani of Niger, and Captain Traoré of Burkina Faso shared more than their military backgrounds. Each had taken power promising to address security threats from armed groups. Each had expelled French forces. Each faced sanctions and isolation from ECOWAS, the West African regional bloc. The Economic Community of West African States responded with escalating pressure, trade restrictions, border closures, freezing of financial assets. ECOWAS, dominated by Nigeria's economic weight, even threatened military intervention against Niger, following General Tiani's July 2023 coup, a threat that ultimately went unfulfilled after vigorous opposition from Burkina Faso and Mali. For ordinary citizens across the three alliance countries, the sanctions created immediate hardships. Food prices doubled in Niger's capital Niamey. Fuel shortages affected transportation across the region. Medical supplies became scarce, yet public support for the alliance remained strong, fueled by nationalist sentiment and anti-colonial rhetoric from the three governments. As Western powers withdrew, Russia stepped into the vacuum. In Mali, the presence of Russian military contractors, formerly known as the Wagner Group, now reorganized under Russia's defense ministry as Africa Corps, had already expanded since 2021. These forces, numbering approximately 1,000 personnel, assisted Malian troops in operations against jihadist groups, though human rights organizations have documented numerous abuses against civilian populations. The Sahel's immense mineral wealth provides a clear motivation for Moscow's interest. Mali ranks as Africa's third-largest gold producer. Niger possesses some of the world's highest-grade uranium deposits. Burkina Faso's gold reserves continue to attract international investment despite security challenges. Beyond these established resources, the region holds significant deposits of lithium, copper, and rare earth elements, critical components for renewable energy technologies. Moscow's engagement with the Sahel fits into its broader Africa strategy, dramatically expanded since the 2019 Russia-Africa summit in Sochi. Russian officials frame their approach as cooperation without conditions, a direct contrast to Western aid that often comes with governance and human rights requirements. For countries facing Western sanctions, this alternative partnership offers both practical assistance and diplomatic legitimacy. The culmination of this growing partnership came in April 2025, when Captain Traoré arrived in Moscow for a 3-day state visit. Russian President Vladimir Putin personally welcomed the young Burkinabe leader at the Kremlin, signaling the importance Russia placed on this relationship. The agreement signed during this visit transformed Burkina Faso's security capabilities. A comprehensive military cooperation package included deliveries of Orlan 10 reconnaissance drones, the same model used effectively in Ukraine and Syria. Advanced air defense systems would help counter the growing threat of armed groups using drone technology. Training programs would bring Burkinabe officers to Russian military academies, creating a generation of security leaders oriented toward Moscow. Beyond military matters, the most ambitious element of the Moscow agreements was a $300 million railway project connecting Ouagadougou to the northern mining regions. For a landlocked country with limited infrastructure, this development promised economic transformation. Russian engineering firms would lead construction, with financing structured through mineral extraction rights, allowing Burkina Faso to develop infrastructure without increasing sovereign debt. The agreements also established a comprehensive training program for Burkinabe forces. Russian instructors would deploy to training centers across Burkina Faso, focusing on counterinsurgency tactics, drone operations, and intelligence gathering. This hands-on approach addressed a key weakness in previous Western training programs, which often emphasized theory over practical battlefield applications. After the final signing ceremony, Captain Traoré's delegation prepared to return to Ouagadougou. Russian media reported the visit as a diplomatic triumph, evidence of Russia's growing influence across Africa. Western officials issued statements of concern, warning about destabilizing external influences in the Sahel. But as Traoré's plane departed Moscow, another African leader's team, Nigeria's Chief of Defense Staff Christopher Musa, prepared to have what was tagged diplomatic meetings with Russia's defense. The timing wasn't coincidental. As Captain Traoré reshapes Burkina Faso's future 870 kilometers to the south, another leader calculates his next move. Bola Ahmed Tinubu, Nigeria's president since May 2023, faces a complex web of domestic pressures and international expectations. Tinubu's path to power followed a more conventional route than Traoré's military takeover. A veteran political operator who transformed Lagos as governor from 1999 to 2007, Tinubu secured the presidency through a contested election that opposition parties challenged in court. The Supreme Court ultimately confirmed his victory in October 2023, But questions about electoral legitimacy have shadowed his administration from the start. Nigeria's position within West Africa transcends mere geography. With over 200 million citizens, it accounts for more than half the region's population. Its $440 billion economy dwarfs its neighbors. This economic dominance translates directly into political influence, particularly within ECOWAS, the regional bloc headquartered in Abuja. By 2025, Tinubu's government confronts mounting economic challenges. The naira has lost 40% of its value since 2023. Inflation hovers near 30%. Fuel subsidy removal, while economically necessary, sparked nationwide protests. Oil production, the backbone of government revenue, remains below capacity due to theft and infrastructure problems. Foreign reserves have declined despite high oil prices. Against this backdrop of domestic strain, Tinubu's relationship with France's President Emmanuel Macron has grown increasingly significant. Their first meeting in June 2023, just weeks after Tinubu's inauguration, marked the beginning of deepening ties. Macron welcomed Tinubu to Paris with full ceremonial honors, a stark contrast to the tepid reception Tinubu received from Washington. France's economic interests in Nigeria help explain this embrace. French multinational Total Energies operates major oil fields in Nigeria and plans to invest $6 billion in the country by 2027. Shipping giant CMA-CGM has expanded its presence at Lagos ports. Retail conglomerate Carrefour continues opening supermarkets across Nigerian cities. These investments give France substantial stakes in Nigeria's stability and policy direction. Western backing extends beyond France. International financial institutions approved loans totaling $5.2 billion for Nigeria in Tinubu's first year, critical support as the country restructured its debt. Western diplomatic missions praised Tinubu's economic reforms, despite their painful impact on ordinary Nigerians. This external validation bolstered Tinubu's domestic standing while creating implicit obligations. The 2023 Niger crisis exposed the limits of Tinubu's regional authority. As ECOWAS chairman, he led the bloc's response to the July 26 coup that overthrew Niger's President Mohamed Bazoum. Initially, Tinubu took a hard line, threatening military intervention if the junta did not restore constitutional order. ECOWAS imposed sanctions and set deadlines for compliance. Plans for military intervention advanced through August 2023. Nigerian generals drafted operational plans. ECOWAS defense chiefs met in Abuja to coordinate. The prospect of Nigerian troops crossing into Niger seemed increasingly likely. Then domestic opposition surfaced. Northern Nigerian senators representing states bordering Niger publicly opposed military action. Civil society groups organized protests. Religious leaders warned against brother fighting brother. Military veterans questioned the feasibility of occupying Niger. These voices highlighted the ethnic, cultural, and historical ties between northern Nigeria and Niger, connections that transcend colonial-era borders. By September 2023, the intervention threat receded. ECOWAS summit statements shifted from military ultimatums to calls for dialogue. The bloc's credibility suffered as its most consequential threat went unfulfilled. Niger's coup leaders, emboldened, accelerated their partnership with Mali and Burkina Faso. For Tinubu, the implications extend to 2027 when he faces re-election. Nigerian presidents traditionally serve 2 four-year terms, but securing a second term requires both domestic achievement and international backing. Opposition figures are already positioning themselves, criticizing Tinubu's economic policies and regional leadership failures. Tinubu's economic reform agenda needs at least 4 more years to deliver visible benefits to voters. Privatization of state enterprises, tax system overhauls, and infrastructure investments remain incomplete. Foreign direct investment, while increasing, still falls short of targets. These economic realities make international financial support crucial for Tinubu's political survival. Domestic challenges further complicate Tinubu's position. In the northeast, Boko Haram factions continue to launch attacks despite military claims of progress. Across the northwest, armed banditry disrupts agriculture and commerce. Separatist agitation persists in the southeast. These security threats stretch Nigeria's military and police resources, creating dependence on Western intelligence and equipment. In this context, a private meeting at the Élysée Palace in February 2025 took on outsized importance. For 3 hours, Tinubu and Macron discussed regional security, with particular focus on what French officials termed Russian destabilization in the Sahel. No detailed readout was published, but subsequent events suggest specific commitments were made. As President Tinubu reviewed reports Captain Traoré's visit to Russia, a decision crystallized. If Nigeria couldn't contain the Sahel alliance through ECOWAS pressure, perhaps a more direct approach was needed. The aircraft landed in Moscow, carrying Nigeria's Chief of Defense Staff, General Christopher Musa, in the name of commemorating of Russia's Victory Day. And with him, a proposal that could alter the balance of power across West Africa. Is Nigeria truly independent in its foreign policy? What forces shape its regional positions? 3 weeks before General Musa's aircraft touched down in Moscow, a classified meeting convened in Nigeria's defense headquarters. President Tinubu had assembled only his most trusted advisors, the National Security Advisor, the Director of State Security, and 3 cabinet ministers. No aides, no assistants, no records. The mission required someone with extraordinary diplomatic skills, unquestioned military authority, and absolute loyalty to the administration. General Christopher Musa, having commanded counterterrorism operations across the Lake Chad region, possessed all these qualities. His appointment as Chief of Defense Staff in 2023 had strengthened Nigeria's military relationships with Western allies. Now, Tinubu needed those connections for a different purpose. The official statement would describe a participation of event, 80th Russia's victory anniversary, and a routine visit to discuss equipment procurement and training exchanges. The actual objectives remained strictly confidential. Present Nigeria as Russia's most valuable African partner, assess the extent of Russian commitments to the Sahel alliance, and offer compelling alternatives that could weaken Moscow's support for Traoré. Unlike Traoré's public reception, Musa's arrival proceeded with minimal ceremony. FSB officers escorted the Nigerian delegation to a convoy of black Mercedes vehicles. Their destination, not the Kremlin, but a government guest house in Moscow's diplomatic quarter. The lower profile reflected both parties' desire for discretion. The meeting occurred not with President Putin, but with Russian Minister of Defense, Mr. Andrei Belousov. Belousov's presence signaled serious interest here, who has direct access to Putin and authority to negotiate substantive agreements. What followed was diplomatic chess at its highest level. The Nigerians opened with appreciation for Russia's growing role in Africa, while expressing concerns about regional stability. The Russians responded with assurances that their partnerships were purely bilateral matters. Neither side mentioned Burkina Faso directly, though both understood the subtext of every exchange. By the second day, the Nigerian delegation presented their core proposal, an energy partnership of unprecedented scale. Nigeria, with Africa's largest natural gas reserves, would grant Gazprom preferential access to offshore fields in exchange for technical expertise and infrastructure investment. The arrangement would redirect Russian energy interests from the Sahel toward Nigeria's established petroleum sector. The centerpiece of Nigeria's offer, a $2 billion contract for Rosatom to construct Nigeria's first nuclear power plant. The facility would address Nigeria's chronic electricity shortages while demonstrating Russian technological capability across West Africa. For Moscow, this represented precisely the kind of high-profile long-term project that enhanced global prestige, far more valuable than tactical drones for Burkina Faso. Additional incentives included preferential access to Nigeria's 200 million person consumer market, reduced tariffs on Russian imports, and a new military procurement program that would diversify Nigeria's traditionally Western-sourced equipment. The package exceeded the total value of Russia's commitments to all 3 Sahel Alliance nations combined. In a secure room within the Russian Defense Ministry, Belousov presented Nigeria's offer to a select group of officials. The discussion centered on a fundamental question: could Russia maintain influence in both Nigeria and the Sahel Alliance, or would a choice become necessary? For some officials, the answer seemed obvious. Nigeria's economy dwarfed the combined GDP of the Sahel nations. Its petroleum resources aligned with Russia's industrial expertise, A partnership with Nigeria would enhance Russia's position in OPEC Plus negotiations and create leverage against Western energy interests. Other voices urged caution. The Sahel alliance offered strategic advantages: military bases that could project Russian influence across North Africa, uranium deposits critical for Russia's nuclear industry, and leaders openly hostile to Western influence. Abandoning them would signal that Russian security guarantees carried limited value. The solution that emerged satisfied immediate Russian interests while preserving future flexibility. Moscow would accept Nigeria's proposals without modifying existing commitments to Burkina Faso. Both relationships would advance separately, creating regional competition for Russian favor. This strategic ambiguity maximized Russia's influence while minimizing immediate commitments. The Kremlin weighs its next move. Siding with Nigeria could secure billions in energy revenue and a nuclear foothold, but abandoning Traoré might fracture Moscow's Sahel strategy. Or is Russia stringing both sides along, leveraging ambiguity to squeeze concessions from each? Musa leaves Moscow on April 16th, believing progress was made. Lavrov's parting words linger. "We'll consider all proposals carefully." What happened in those meetings would remain secret for just some days. The clock is ticking, and the Sahel's fate hangs in the balance. Stay with us. The truth is about to break wide open. On May 13, 2025, a digital bombshell detonates. An anonymous account, Sahel Truth, uploads a trove of classified documents to the dark web. The files, hundreds of encrypted emails, memos, and audio transcripts, expose General Musa's Moscow talks and Tinubu's French ties. London-based Global Watch, a respected investigative outlet, obtains the cache. Their analysts, including ex-MI6 officer, spend 48 hours verifying authenticity. They cross-reference metadata with Nigerian military IP addresses and confirm signatures on a memo marked "Eyes Only" from Tinubu's office. The documents are real, mirroring the 2023 Pentagon leaks in scope and impact. By May 13th, Global Watch publishes, and the world takes notice. The leaks reveal chilling details. A May 2025 email from Musa to Russia's FSB outlines Nigeria's offer: Arctic LNG access and a $2 billion Rosatom nuclear deal to curb aid to Burkina Faso. A transcript captures Lavrov questioning Musa's authority, hinting at Kremlin skepticism. Another file, a French diplomatic cable from April 2024, shows Macron urging Tinubu to neutralize Sahel defiance. Encryption is military-grade, AES 256 with Tor routing, suggesting state-level expertise. Patterns emerge. The leaker used Russian-language servers but included Chinese character metadata, muddying the trail. Is this deliberate misdirection or a clue? Who is Sahel Truth? Theories swirl. Russia's GRU could have leaked the files to expose Nigeria's double-dealing, cementing Traoré's trust. Moscow's done this before, leaked CIA cables in 2016 to disrupt US politics. Alternatively, China's MSS might be the culprit, aiming to weaken Nigeria's Western ties. Beijing's $5 billion debt hold over Nigeria, reported by Reuters in 2024, gives motive. A third possibility, an insider, a disgruntled ECOWAS official or Nigerian officer, inspired by Snowden's 2013 NSA leaks, could have acted alone. On X, Sahel Truth posts surge with 300,000 mentions by May 14th, debating Russian versus Chinese hands. No one knows. Sahel Truth vanishes, a ghost in the machine. The fallout spreads like wildfire but was quick censored. By May 14th, Tinubu betrayal trends globally, hitting 500,000 posts on X, fueled by Nigerian youth and Pan-African activists. Al Jazeera runs a breaking news segment citing Global Watch's findings. France's Le Monde questions Macron's Africa policy, while Russia's RT amplifies the story, framing Tinubu as a Western stooge. In Abuja, Nigeria's response unfolded through carefully scripted press briefings. Presidential spokesperson Bayo Onanuga characterized the leaked documents as selective fragments presented without context and emphasized Nigeria's unwavering commitment to African brotherhood. Each statement avoided addressing specific allegations while projecting indignation at the breach itself. Last year, protests erupt in Kano, Nigeria, where Hausa communities, culturally tied to Niger, burn ECOWAS flags, raising Niger's flag, calling Tinubu traitor. Who do you think leaked these documents? The comment section is already debating this fiercely. The truth is out, but the mastermind remains hidden. Stay with us. The consequences are about to shake Africa to its core. Ibrahim Traoré once takes to Burkina Faso's airwaves, his voice steady but fierce. From Ouagadougou's national broadcast studio, he accuses Tinubu of serving colonial shadows and vows deeper Russian ties. The Sahel will not kneel, he declares, rallying millions. In Abuja, Tinubu's team scrambles. A midnight press conference labels the Sahel Truth leak a foreign fabrication, blaming unnamed enemies. Nigeria's foreign minister, Yusuf Tugar, claims the documents are forged, but ex-posts under #Tinubu betrayal show public skepticism. In Paris, Macron issues a vague statement on African unity, sidestepping France's role. Meanwhile, Russia acts. 50 more Africa Corps advisors land in Burkina Faso by May 15th, bolstering Traoré's defenses. The ripple effects fracture West Africa. ECOWAS, already weakened by the Sahel's 2024 exit, faces a crisis. Senegal's President Bassirou Faye demands transparency. The Sahel Alliance, now a confederation, gains clout. Mali's Assimi Goïta hosts a Niamey summit on May 16th, announcing joint military drills with Russian trainers. Youth across the region, inspired by Traoré, flood X with Sahel Rising, sharing videos of Burkinabe flags alongside Russian ones. A 2025 Afrobarometer survey shows 62% of West African youth favor non-Western alliances, a shift from 48% in 2023. New alignments emerge. Chad and Mauritania quietly send envoys to Mali, eyeing Sahel partnerships. Tinubu's position unravels. In Nigeria, southern elites, reliant on Western trade, pressure Tinubu to mend ties with France, but his credibility frays. The Guardian Nigeria reports a 15% dip in his approval rating by May 15th, with 2027 re-election plans in jeopardy. Internationally, Washington and London soften support, wary of backing a compromised leader. Tinubu's team pivots, floating talks with China for a $3 billion rail project to counter Russia's Sahel gains, but Beijing hesitates, sensing Nigeria's weakened hand. The balance of power shifts. France's influence, battered by Sahel expulsions, shrinks further. French trade with West Africa dropped 22% since 2022, per UNTAD. Russia and China fill the gap, with Moscow's $500 million in Sahel arms deals and Beijing's $2 billion in Nigerian infrastructure by 2025. Across Africa, sovereignty movements surge. Cameroon's youth launch No More West on X, echoing Traoré's call. In just one leak, decades of diplomatic pretense were stripped away, revealing the raw truth about who controls what in Africa. The Sahel stands taller, but the game isn't over. Stay with us. The final question awaits. The Sahel Truth leak exposes a truth that echoes across Africa. Sovereignty hangs by a thread. From Burkina Faso to Nigeria, nations grapple with foreign pressures, their futures shaped by unseen hands. This is no isolated clash. Information warfare now defines the battlefield. The dark web drop, viral X posts, and global headlines prove it. African youth from Lagos to Nairobi are waking up, sharing Sahel Rising, and demanding accountability. A 2025 Pew Research poll shows 68% of Africans under 30 distrust Western media, a record high. Knowledge is shifting power, and the continent's pulse beats stronger. Across West Africa, university campuses became centers of pro-Russian sentiment. Student organizations in Ghana, Togo, and Benin, countries with no formal Russian partnerships, organized demonstrations supporting the Sahel Alliance. Young activists shared images comparing Captain Traoré to Thomas Sankara, explicitly framing current events as continuation of anti-colonial struggle. African media captured this transformation through striking political cartoons. One widely shared image showed Captain Traoré standing tall while President Tinubu cowered beneath a desk labeled Colonial Office. Another depicted Nigeria as a ventriloquist's dummy, with a French hand controlling its movements. These visual commentaries reflected a fundamental shift in regional self-perception. The Moscow leak transcends its immediate context. Beyond the specific tensions between Nigeria and Burkina Faso lies a fundamental question facing every African nation. In an era of renewed global competition, what does true sovereignty require? The battlefield has shifted. Territorial conquest has given way to information warfare, the strategic exposure or suppression of truth to shape public perception. Colonial powers once needed armies to control African resources. Today, influence operates through diplomatic backchannels, economic pressure, and carefully curated narratives. Yet, as this case demonstrates, these methods remain vulnerable to sudden, catastrophic exposure. Across the continent, Young Africans are awakening to this reality. Political awareness among those under 25, who represent over 60% of Africa's population, has transformed. Digital literacy combined with historical understanding creates citizens capable of identifying external manipulation. The generation coming of age today recognizes patterns their grandparents fought against during independence movements. History repeats. In 1960, France's SS backed coups to control newly independent Congo's uranium. Britain's MI6 meddled in Ghana's 1966 coup to oust Nkrumah, who dared nationalize gold. Today, the Sahel's fight for gold, oil, and uranium mirrors those struggles, a decolonization battle in a digital age. Traoré's defiance, like Sankara's before him, challenges that grip, but the cost is steep. These patterns echo throughout Africa's modern history. The 1961 assassination of Congo's Patrice Lumumba followed his efforts to secure economic independence. Thomas Sankara's 1987 murder came after challenging foreign financial institutions. The 2011 NATO intervention in Libya occurred as Muammar Gaddafi promoted an African currency independent from the dollar and euro. Each case featured external powers working through African intermediaries to preserve economic advantage. The fundamental struggle remains unchanged: control over Africa's vast resources. The continent holds 30% of the world's mineral reserves, 8% of natural gas, 12% of oil reserves, 40% of gold, and 90% of chromium and platinum. Colonial boundaries were drawn specifically to divide resources among European powers. Today's diplomatic maneuvers serve similar objectives through more sophisticated methods. Pan-African solidarity provides the strongest defense against external manipulation. When African nations compete for foreign approval, they create vulnerabilities that outside powers exploit. When they coordinate policies, particularly regarding resource extraction, security arrangements, and monetary systems, they establish genuine independence that no leak can undermine. The Moscow leak will not be the last revelation to shake African politics. As global powers compete for position on the continent, similar exposures will emerge. The question isn't whether more diplomatic secrets will become public, but whether African citizens will recognize the larger patterns they reveal. This generation has unprecedented tools to understand and respond to these challenges. Digital connectivity allows information to flow despite government restrictions. Historical awareness provides context for current events. Continental identity transcends the artificial borders that fragment Africa's collective strength. From Cape Town to Cairo, from Dakar to Djibouti, a new consciousness is emerging. Not idealistic or naive, but clear-eyed about power dynamics that have shaped the continent for centuries. Understanding that genuine independence requires more than flags and anthems, it demands control over resources, information, and narrative. The story of Captain Traoré, President Tinubu, and the Moscow negotiations represents one chapter in this continuing journey. The external powers change: Britain, France, America, Russia, China. But Africa's mission remains constant: to achieve the true independence that colonial withdrawal only began. Who will control Africa's wealth tomorrow? This story empowers us. Information is your weapon. Every leaked memo, every ex-post arms you to question narratives. Citizen vigilance, sharp and unyielding, guards our future. Pan-African solidarity from Dakar to Addis Ababa builds a shield no foreign deal can pierce. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, hit notification bell, like and share to join Africa Liberators, our community of truth seekers. Share this video with someone who needs to grasp these power dynamics. Comment your theories. What's next for the Sahel Alliance? Tomorrow, another hidden truth, where new battles loom. The sun is rising on Africa's truth. Be part of it.